What's up, and welcome to another Monday edition of Locked On NBA. The biggest stories, the local experts. I'm your new Monday host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today we'll be talking to Tony East of Locked On Pacers as the Pacers are headed for a rebuild, whether that's the right decision or not, and who may or may not be on the way out. We'll find out here in just a moment. But first, message from our friends over at betonline.ag. BetOnline has you covered for all of the action this season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football and basketball season march forward. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to their new updated website and sign up today using promo code LOCKEDON to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your very first deposit. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, even your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Joining us now is Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers. Tony. A head coach in health and safety protocols and a reported rebuild on the horizon. How are you holding up?
What a week it was in Indiana. I mean, the hits just kept coming. TJ McConnell out for the season, and then it comes out the next day that they might be retooling / rebuilding, and then 2 days later, Miles Turner kind of wants a different role or just wants some clarity on his role, still kind of ambiguous on what the exact emphasis that he wants there. And now I read Carlisle's in health and safety protocols. Justin Holiday's out of health and safety protocols. This all happened in 4 days. Like, it was a wild week in the state of Indiana.
Do you have whiplash yet? Are you okay?
No, fortunately I survived it. I knew a little bit that some of this stuff was coming, which made it a little more manageable for me. But my goodness, I mean, it was just hit after hit after hit that I had to talk about. But the team played very well despite everything going on off the court, which also made it a little easier to navigate. That they were like, yeah, we don't care. We're just gonna beat these good teams.
Well, and we're gonna touch on that a little bit, but let's start first with the reported decision that the Pacers are gonna go the rebuilding route. I guess the main point is why now? Like why suddenly now, right? You bring in Rick Carlisle, who's a very clearly a win now type coach. So why the sudden pivot to a rebuild direction?
Yeah, there's kind of two answers to that, and one is a non-answer and one is a real answer. And I'll do the non-answer first because it will kind of dictate a lot of the rest of my answers today. And that is, I don't think rebuild is the right word for what they're going to do. I think retool is the right word for what they're going to do because of, one, they have a lot of good players now and some that literally can't be traded this year, namely Malcolm Brogdon. And two, you can't see me, but I'm literally gesturing at the history of the Pacers of all time that says they have never rebuilt and haven't picked inside the top 10 since 1989. They are not going to do a teardown rebuild. Like they just don't. Like, I don't care what the word in the articles are. They're just not going to do that. So I am under the assumption that they're going to retool. Why are they doing it now? Well, one, as stated in the piece by The Athletic, written by Shams and Bob Kravitz, their owner, Herb Simon, is now finally on board with it, right? Like, he does not like to go backwards and then go forwards. Like, you have to at some points in the NBA. The Pacers have done it before, but he doesn't like to do it. So he does it at the last possible second. And two, they're kind of expensive team, and they were 9-16, and they looked horrible. They lost 4 games in a row 2 weeks ago, and they weren't like tough opponents either way. They kept losing every close game. Caris LeVert looked horrible, which was like their big acquisition last year. So those factors together, just if you're the owner and you're paying all this money for a team your president believes in, and you don't see the product, you're probably ready to say, all right, let's pivot direction. So the timing was they were playing bad, and they knew Miles Turner was about to come out and say that he wanted a bigger role. And the why now is that they were really terrible to start the season. But I really think what's going to happen is they started poorly and they would like to retool around their best players like Duarte and Brogdon and one of the centers.
As the host of Locked On Rockets, can you just say for me one more time that Caris LeVert, their big acquisition, has looked terrible? Just say that one more time for me.
Yeah, well, I know that the Rockets have disdain because they got smoked in the media for how that all shook out for them. But LeVert had back pain a ton and missed the first couple weeks of the season and was not 100% when he was playing, and he looked really rough. Like, a lot of their problems were that he was really struggling. So Rockets fans can hang their hat on him not being this. I mean, he'll still probably return. He won't return as much value as they spent out to get him, but he'll still return them something if they move him. But yeah, he played very well in their 3-game win streak. They just went on, but he was very rough for like the first month of the season.
Okay, so then let's change the verbiage on this a little bit. So we'll move away from rebuilding and we'll utilize the new verbiage, retooling. Is this the right decision then in your eyes for this Pacers team to try and actively come out and say, yeah, we're retooling the roster?
I think so. I mean, This is the same team they've had since the start of 2019, and they were the 4 seed in the first year of it, but they didn't win a playoff game. They got completely smoked by the Heat, and the Heat went to the finals. It wasn't like embarrassing, but they got swept, and then they didn't even make the playoffs last year. They were under 500. So to have 0 playoff wins to your name and still be a bit expensive, especially if COVID dropped the finances, and then start this year 9-16 through the first third-ish of the season, I mean that's not worth it, right? Why? What are you doing? What are you trying to do with a team like that? So yeah, I definitely think it makes sense for them to retool. The question is how, like, especially the added factor is if they didn't draft Chris Duarte and they still just had a veteran team, you can't really retool. You don't have youth to lean on. But now that they nailed a draft pick and have one of the best, whatever number, 5, 6, 7 rookies in the league, it makes a lot more sense to get a little younger and shake it up. So I think it is the right move, especially with how bad they started, but they still have good players. Like there's a reason they just beat 3 good teams last week. So it's a really unique situation, and towing that middle line is very hard. They kind of have to try because of the situation they're in. But yeah, I think it is the right time to try something like this.
You just mentioned Chris Duarte's name, and he's a guy that I want to spend a moment talking about before we wrap this thing up. But walk me through, who are the untouchables, if there are any? I assume Duarte is probably one of those guys. And who are the players you see as likely going to be on the move while the Pacers look to retool?
Yeah, Brogdon's untouchable by rule, not by maybe by team choice too. They just extended him, but because of when they extended him 6 months after, they can't trade him. He literally cannot be traded this season. And then all the verbiage from reporting and from logic really suggests that one of the centers will be moved. So whichever one they don't move will be untouchable then. Like if they trade Turner, Sabonis is probably, no player on an under 500 team is untouchable, but for the sake of what you're asking me, whichever center they don't deal is basically untouchable. Duarte's definitely untouchable. And Isaiah Jackson, they really like the rookie they picked 22nd this year. So those are the 4 names that I only said 3 names, whichever center is the 4th, that I think are the least likely to get dealt. And then TJ Warren's a weird one because there are reasons for them to trade him, but he's really good. He likes playing in Indiana, and he fits really well with whatever they're doing. I kind of don't think he'll get dealt. But that's kind of it for guys that seem like no chance or low chance they get moved. Everyone else is either in a weird role or it makes some sense or it's valid that they would move him given where they are.
Which center between Sabonis and Turner should be the one on the way out?
Yeah, that's the question. They've been trying to figure that out for years. If you go by history, Miles Turner's been in trade rumors every season since forever, it feels like. They were on the goal line of trading him for him and other stuff for Gordon Hayward a few seasons ago. And the Pacers, the way they operate is if a player's in trade rumors or really in deep talks, they'll tell them, right? They don't want them to get blindsided if a trade actually happens. And Turner's been very candid. Like, yeah, they told me they were close to dealing me. So they've been trying. They haven't been trying to move him, but they've taken calls on him for years and years and years. And he only has a year and a half left on his contract, whereas Sabonis has 3. Just going on those facts, you would say Turner. Turner's played very well the last 2 seasons, fits on any team, including whatever the new version of the Pacers may be, whereas Sabonis needs the ball a lot to be more effective. So you could say, maybe there's a fit thing where you'd rather deal Sabonis, but Sabonis is better by not a significant amount, but a pretty large amount, and 2-time All-Star for a reason, fits with a lot of the players the Pacers have right now, fits very well with Duarte. Their two-man chemistry is excellent. So I feel like Turner's more likely to get moved, but I understand why they might say, well, we can get more for Sabonis, and then Turner fits very well on whatever our next iteration looks like. So maybe they do that, but I would say it's much more likely Turner's the one that gets moved.
Let's spend a moment talking about Chris Duarte, who has had a phenomenal start to his rookie season. He's averaging 13 points a game, shooting about just under 35% from 3 in about 30 minutes a night. He was, easily billed as kind of like the ready-made rookie to come in and, join a Rick Carlisle-led team and be an immediate contributor. So what have you seen out of Chris Duarte, and how impressed have you been with his season so far?
Incredibly. And, his stats are what they are, but he got hurt in a game they played in Sacramento and it took him a little bit to recover. First 10 games, he was 16 points a game on 44, 42, 92 splits, right? Then he gets hurt. And in the last week or so, he's gotten back to being really efficient in part of their 3-game win streak. He was 9 for 11 with 23 points in their win over the Knicks a few nights ago. His scoring polish is ridiculous. Like he takes a lot of tough shots, but he makes all of them. Like it's very early on with the rookie, you're like, why is he? He's barely creating any space. Why is he shooting that? And now you're confident he's going to make them over half the time because he's just such a good shot maker, so fearless. Like other coaches I ask and other players I ask about him are just so impressed with his poise and fearlessness every time he shoots the ball. And now he's learning the passing a little more. Malcolm Brogdon's been really egging him on in that way. He had a 6-assist game earlier this week. He had 4 assists last week against the champs when they played Milwaukee. So he's learning the game a lot better. He's an awesome defender. They stick him on Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, James Harden. Like he does everything for them. He's really impressive for a rookie already. He starts every game. I have no reason to see now that Justin Holiday's back why he won't keep starting, because he's been very good. And now that his shoulder's back to 100%. So this is the best rookie the Pacers have had in a very, very long time. And it's very impressive to watch him play every day.
Tony, you're going to have everybody covered for all things Pacers over at Locked On Pacers. I appreciate you jumping on Locked On NBA with me today.
Of course, everybody. Of course, check out Locked On Pacers, where we will break down all this stuff and Duarte in very much more detail.